over, so we'll start the recording and sharing the screen. So let me share also the document link to the chat so everyone can join and add their own name in the attendee list. And for the maintainer, please enter the planning poker room. Oh, I already have it open. Nope. So we have quite some tickets to refine. But before we start with the refinement, I wanted to speak briefly with you, Rakshit. Since you are working on adding the time frame support for the Keptn metric CRDs, I would suggest that we postpone the merge of that PR until we do the release of 0.8, which should come either today or tomorrow. So we can merge that PR and then work on the CLI changes. Otherwise, we release Keptn in a version that you have this option, but you cannot really use it.
Yep, that sounds
okay.
right. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And thanks to you for working on that. Okay, so 10 different tickets. Where to start? Where is the tracking? Here. I kind of remove now the work in progress since I'm done with this. So the next big thing for 0.9 should be the support for readiness gates. So during KubeCon, talking with people, we discovered that everyone have their own special scenario with their own special platform setup, and many people have custom schedulers deployed in their clusters. Therefore, we should go away from our scheduler plugin and instead use the readiness gates. This way, more people can use Keptn. And also, we don't have to ship another image, consuming more resources, allocating more memory in the cluster, where we can use something which is native. But there is a big but. Readiness gates is just in beta, is not stable yet. Therefore, we cannot go out with that full-fledged. We need to be ready to support it, but we can only enable this feature where in two conditions. Readiness gates is enabled, and we are deploying KLT in a cluster where it's stabled. So until then, we should hide all of this behind the feature flag. And before doing that, we need to do a bit of refactoring. So the first thing is to change how we do inject the decoder inside the webhooks, because here the container runtime or the library that we're using changed the way of it works, and we're not compatible anymore. So we need to adapt to this breaking change from their own code base, which should be already available in the POC of Anna here. Instead of injecting automatically the decoder at creation, we had to pass it through when we create a struct. Quite straightforward, I would say. All clear? If so, then I think we can put an estimation. Oops. I put the link with the delete. I'm entering the room to cast a vote as well. Moritz, do you want to have some clarification?
Not really.
Okay.
I have no idea like how much this is in terms of changes.
I put an S instead of an XS. So basically it's straightforward. Change from having a method that injects it from that to have here inside the struct, passing this decoder, create outside and pass it through. So very straightforward. I put S instead of XS because maybe we need to adapt multiple tests, but I'm fine with an XS. It's quite straightforward, I would say. And this can be also a very good first issue. Do you agree? Since it's an XS. Okay. Then support controller runtime. After we change our code base with this explicit injection of the decoder, we can move and bump our library, the controller runtime version, to 0.15. And here we need to do a bit of a refactoring of the code, let's say, because there are a lot of other breaking changes. And we need to change how we inject our certificates. Anna already did the POC here. Slowly we'll go to the right line. Here it is. From here to this, we just need to force a cast, basically, a coercion. Then this is handled in a separate ticket, the decoder. And then we need to adapt how ports can be configured. Before was done via client cache, disable cache for, oh, sorry. Basically small adjustment here and there of the different struct fields. And of course, update all the unit tests. Any question for this? Or maybe Anna, Florian, do you have more information to add on top of that?
When I did the research, the library has not stabilized yet, was not released yet. So these are the changes listed up to now. There may be other things that fail when we go for it.
So here's the list of all breaking changes. As you can see, there are quite some.
So maybe we should link this now that is available.
Fair point. Where is it? Can I pin? No. Well. So ready to estimate? Or do you need further? Anna, question. Are you not scared by the amount of breaking changes?
If there are not more than what I found, no. But if there are, yes.
I would
Some
rather
of those things, yeah.
consider into the estimation the uncertainty about multiple more breaking changes.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I will go to M.
I forgot to mention that if we bump controller runtime, we bump Kubernetes as well. So this is also Kubernetes to 0.27.
Yeah, one is dependent on the other.
That would mean that we drop support for 124, right?
Officially, yes.
I would note that down somewhere at least. That's pretty important. That means like documentation changes and stuff like that.
what was the no. I hope GitHub can render that. Yes. Okie dokie. Then finally, after we have the code base ready to support readiness gates, we can work. Is it part of this? Yes. We can work on implementing this feature. The first part is to have a new webhook that can work with readiness gates. So in addition to the existing webhook, we create a new one. And this new one can inject the readiness gate. I call it KLT pre-check gate, but the name is up, for discussion. If you have a better name, speak it in the comment or Slack, wherever. Or during implementation, during the peer review, let's come up with a better name. Note that this webhook should be registered if and only if the feature flag KLT readiness gates is enabled. And by default, the flag is disabled. So by default, readiness gates, we don't support it, but can be enabled. Furthermore, the webhook should only be called when a new manifest is created. If a manifest is modified or deleted, the webhook should not be invoked at all. So we should only register on the create event. And then it should add the readiness gate only if the namespace is annotated with the Keptn enabled label, like the other webhook. All clear? Makes sense?
I have a question.
Yes.
What happens to the scheduler deployment? Is that
That's a different
handled
ticket.
through- okay.
That's
So
a
we have a
different ticket.
separate feature flag for Helm or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just code feature flag.
Yeah. Mhm.
Can be an inverter var, can be open feature flag, up to the implementer. I would rather go with open feature so you can control separately, but we can work on that later. Component and cattle tests, I would say. Cattle test, I don't know if they make sense at this point in time, but
In the proof of concept, there is an example of a cattle test for the webhook.
I'm not sure if cattle test at this point in time is necessary
Because it's not finished, yeah.
and it's behind the feature flag. That's why. So cattle test, I asking you, Tim, what do you think? Should you have a cattle test that turn on the feature flag, run and checks for is the manifest now having this readiness gate or not? Or it's better to wait until all the pieces are complete and we do a final end-to-end test.
Can I extend this to a bigger question?
Mm-hmm.
When will we at all test the whole feature with the Helm part as well? Because right now we do not do our test with Helm, we do it with the manifest, but this whole logic won't be tried.
I would say Helm is a bit different because in Helm we need to consider scheduling. The scheduler should not be deployed. This feature is true. Is enabled, sorry. So I would not consider how the manifests hit the cluster, because in a cattle test you check when manifest hit the cluster, what's happening. So once everything is already installed, I will not consider the installation. I would do a different pipeline for the installation through Helm. If that makes sense.
Okay. So that part we test separately, and then do we enable or do we not enable? the new scheduling?
So I would suggest right now, let's remove cattle tests and just keep it on the component tests. So we make sure that the feature in isolation works. And afterwards we can test better, more and real end-to-end if the gates is being added, maybe through a different pipeline that also uses Helm.
But we can still just test both branches of the feature, like both implementations. Why not? We can just test the one value of the feature flag and the other value of the feature flag and how it behaves. Shouldn't it be even the same test mostly? Because the behavior should not change.
It should change. If the feature flag is true, then the manifest is annotated with the readiness gates. If it's false, then it's annotated with the scheduling.
But I mean, the behavior of what KLT does for the user doesn't change. Scheduling will still happen the same way, just in the background it will be different. So
We
the
would
custom
have-
tests could maybe
Also,
actually
yeah.
be the same mostly.
In the tests, we only check whether a deployment is then alive and ready to be running. But,
Exactly.
We just need to make sure that the scheduler is not mentioned in any of the YAML.
That's the thing that you want. What do you want to check? Yeah.
But
Then we don't
in
need
the
cattle
cattle
tests
test,
since
I
they're
would
already there.
expect, yeah, I would expect that we maybe additionally check that it has the annotation, but in the end, the behavior of KLT should be the same.
Yes.
Yeah, but probably there could be simple test in which you add an environment variable that overrides, and you test only for that. But
Should be assert on scheduler and readiness gate. Let's add a separate entry on that. Okie dokie. Other question for this ticket?
can we link the proof of concept?
Perfect. Nothing to be added. Then we need to change the other webhook. So right now we have two different webhooks in parallel because we cannot drop the support for scheduler. Because it could be that some customers, users want to still run with the scheduler or are using the Kubernetes version, before readiness gates is stable. Therefore, we need to implement the reverse logic on the existing webhook that injects the scheduler. Where if the KLT readiness gates feature flag is true, then the injection of the scheduler doesn't happen. If it's false, then it happens. Clear? Moritz, I see you
Isn't this solved by the other ticket already?
No, the other ticket has a new webhook.
Yeah, but the old one is still there if you don't delete it.
The old one is annotating the deployment for the scheduler, and this is a logic You don't
Yeah.
want all the time now. So you need to
Yeah, but
change that.
if you implement the other webhook and the feature flag, wouldn't you just put the other thing in the else block of the if anyways?
No, because are two different webhooks.
Yeah.
And this one is a, so the previous ticket adds a new webhook
Okay.
and they hide the logic behind this. And this one instead is different, where we change the existing webhook, adding the feature flag. So now we adapt the test as well. I keep it split so this can be working parallel, but if you want, we can include to the previous one.
No, it's fine if it's separate work. That's fine. The other ticket is pretty big already, anyways.
Yeah, that's why I try to split it out a bit. Clear? Questions, clarifications? I take no words as a all clear. Okie. Moritz, do you want some extra clarification or do you?
It's probably fine.
Okay.
Maybe also a good first issue.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Now it's the next piece of the puzzle. We add the readiness. Yes, Godfrey?
So, does it look like an issue I can pick up and work on now or later in the future?
There was quite some noise. I couldn't hear you well. Could you please
Sorry
repeat
about,
it?
sorry about that. My background is kind of noisy. Does it look like an issue I can pick up now and work on?
No, unfortunately, you cannot work immediately on this one because before we need to bump the dependency. I forgot to edit. Great. Sorry. Before we need to have this bump on this library. Otherwise, we cannot use it. Once this is resolved, then this can be picked up.
All right.
Okie dokie. Then next piece of the puzzle, as I was saying, we have now everything in place that adds a readiness gate. We need to get rid of this readiness gate as soon, oh, sorry, not as soon, but after all the pre-deployment checks are completed. So Kubernetes can pick the workload and bind that to a node. And for doing that, we need to change the workload instance controller to remove the readiness gates, because this controller has visibility into the workload and knows when the pre-deployment checks are finished, checking the status of the CRT, and can move it into the deployment phase. When it does that, it will simply remove the readiness gate. This is also what the Kubernetes scheduling SIG recommended us to do. All clear why we need to do that in the workload instance controller? Okay, I don't see any questions. So mind that also this needs to be behind the feature flag. So this behavior of moving the readiness gates is only occurring if the kld.readinessGate feature flag is set to true. I forgot to add here tests.
And
What
also
type
the
of
dependency again, probably.
Yeah. For this, what type of test we should work on?
So unit tests.
Yeah, I
Using
believe we
a
have
fake client. This would be very easy
easy.
to check extensively.
Mm.
There may be the need to adopt the component test. We do have some for the workload guy. Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready to estimate? Okay, we are ranging from hard to easy. Let's start from XS. Since Anna, you did a proof of concept, please start from there. Why?
In my mind here, we are adding a little logic instead of removing or replacing. So this is a bit easier. And I'm thinking that the feature flag is already there. And probably this is a one simple test we need to put. In the other one, you have to make sure everything works by removing stuff. But it's
Flow?
okay, S is the same.
Flow argument for your S?
Well, I would also have said XS, but due to adding extensive tests in the form of unit tests, I bumped it a little bit up to S.
Then Moritz, XS, you agree with the previous discussion, or?
Yeah,
I
should be pretty simple to add since everything else is there already.
I put M because when I'm I don't know how app pre-deployment checks work. I assume that there should not be any issue with that, but if you want to test also for that, I thought maybe it would be a bit harder, but I'm fine with an XS, honestly, since it's mainly tests. Flo, do you mind XS or?
That's perfectly fine.
Perfect. And okay, now that all pieces are in place, we need to mark. Now I remember I put the work in progress because of the Helm chart part. We're still missing. Now that we have everything put in place for the readiness gates, we need to mark the scheduler as deprecated. And this is mainly documentation. Here, I would like to be smart, but I'm open to discussion. That the operator could use the client to discover the Kubernetes version and overrule the feature flag definition and see if we are in a version with this method that has readiness gates stabled, we enable the feature out of the box.
I would have a question here.
Yes.
Are the readiness gates enabled as a feature flag on Kubelet? And can this be?
Yes.
Okay, so it might be the case that we have a Kubernetes version where the readiness gates are available but not activated.
Yeah, it could be that the server version is high enough, but the node version is not.
Tell me,
That's what you mean, right? Like kubelet is 26 and server is 27 already.
Yeah. So if it's 28, it will be for sure enabled by default, and then we can know for sure. But 27, for instance, we don't know whether the user enabled it or not.
No, but beside that, Christian Moritz have a valid point, because here we only check for server version, but server might be one version forward compared to the node.
The client.
And so there are mismatch between kubelets. So good for.
But then again, can you not check for feature flags as well in the client somehow? Maybe that's a possibility.
Might be possibility, but could be also mean higher privileges, right? Yeah.
But I guess we can be sure if server version is 28.
Yeah,
Or we can be sure that it's working.
exactly.
Right. Or whatever the next version after it was set to stable.
Okay, so we'll keep the previous text to make sure that we have the logic. The only thing that we change is which version of Kates we are looking for should be configured via So let's keep the logic open. We follow up with a version eventually when we know, because also they plan to release it in 127, but might be shipped, the version after, so we need to change. So let's have this value configurable and default to 130. So we are extra sure. Opinion on the default value?
That's like very far out in the future, right?
I know. My only fear is that someone is installing this version in a, but no, because we have the scheduler. And now it's in alpha. No, sorry, beta already. So let's have default 127. Similarly, the Helm chart should check the Kubernetes version. This way, we can decide if the scheduler should be deployed or not.
Oh, we have the same issue there with server version. It's exactly the same.
But since we are enforcing the value here anyway,
Okay.
all clear for this? Looks like, yep. Then, of course, documentation needs to be updated. Oh, sorry, I forgot to delete estimation. Oh, someone changed their opinion. I put L to be on the safer side, but M is also fine for me. And here we have a dependency. I was waiting for the readiness gates to be marked as stable before we can trigger this. But we can prepare everything and just wait for the PR to be merged once the value is stable. Or since now we have it behind a feature flag or a template, we don't need to depend on this. Your opinion? You can enable in kubelet, test it, and go out, so we don't need really to depend. Okie dokie. So as always, I forgot to remove it. Here, Andre wanted to create a refactoring of the Keptn task and Keptn task definition controllers. And maybe we can have a discussion here, because his suggestion is to remove. So one of the point I'm a bit against, which is getting rid of the parent possibility, which means I can define a Keptn task, which is a function that, let's say, posts a Slack message somewhere. I have this function with some parameters. For instance, the channel in which this message should be sent and the token to authenticate, so we know from which user or which user is used to post this message. So I create this function with these parameters. Then I can create follow-up functions that depend on this one. The only thing that they do are changing these parameters. So I can reuse the same function and just customize it. And Andre wants to get rid of this with mounting config map. So you can also create a function pointing towards a config map directly, and you just specify parameters. I'm a bit against this because permissions, we lose airbag capabilities, in the sense of before, in order to apply not really, now that I'm talking that loud. Yeah, because before, if I wanted to change the a Keptn task definition, I need to have write permission on the resource. But now I can change functions, mount as a config map as I wish, because that's a more common permission to grant. But if I'm able to create Keptn task definitions, I might able also to update others. I don't know, I'm a bit against that anyway. Yes, Geoffrey?
Sorry, it's me again. Is anybody working on this particular PR, on this particular issue? Sorry.
Could you repeat? You have a huge background noise. It's hard to.
Sorry about the background noise.
No worries.
Is anyone working on this particular issue? I see that you raised as an assignee.
Yes, because Andre wanted to do this refactoring, but then we wanted to discuss, does this refactoring make sense in all the points that he wants to or not? So he's already working on that. He already has a PR.
Okay, that's fine.
That's why I know about this parent part. So, any comments on that? What's your opinion?
Nothing.
Right now we do already have the possibility to reuse tasks by either referring to the config map or to the function that lies somewhere on GitHub, for example. So I do think with those options, this would already be sufficient to kind of cover this use case of reusability of tasks. And at least in its current form, the parent task handling adds a lot of error-prone complexity in the code. So,
but what if I have an air-gapped cluster? I cannot fetch something from my server.
Then you would have the config map option. But
Then
I understand your arguments for being able to restrict the permissions to hide this behind the Keptn task definition.
so all other points make sense to me. The only one which I'm a bit against it is this parent reference. Why it's hard and brittle this logic? This is a question for you, Flo, since you said it's can create problems.
Yeah, right now it's just implemented in a very wonky way. So we should at least try to simplify that and look into this, how to refactor it properly.
The current options. Maybe relying on the current option is not enough. Config map, we lose permission to restrict who can change Keptn tasks. And the other one was remote server. We can okay. Then I wanted to discuss with you people because I saw that we have quite some vulnerability are quite low, I would say. They're not very problematic for us, but we need to make sure that we bump all of these images and we get rid of these problems. So it was just for awareness. Let's work on fixing this next. This is also a very good first issue if someone wants to work on this, since it's basically looking into the result of this pipeline and said, runtime go 120.4 as a problem. Let's bump the dependency to 1.20.5 since this is fixed here. And then migration guide. I think we are not ready yet to refine this since Mike didn't finish to put all the different tickets. But as a information for everyone here, we want to create some migration guides, how you can do work in Keptn v1, or how can you migrate what you were doing in Keptn v1 with instead doing the same with KLT. And so far we are collecting use cases, and mainly through the Slack, I could see people was using Keptn v1 for deploying via our Helm service and run tests as a post-deployment checks, or more generally speaking, via job executor service to run any image or any custom task after the deployment was completed. Therefore, we will provide some guidance on our website how you can migrate from Keptn v1 to KLT, maintaining whatever you were able to with the newest tool. And that's it. more details will follow, I guess, next week. Okie dokie. No more points to refine for today. Any comments from the community, from the people here? If not, then I will wish you a very nice rest of your day and see you tomorrow at the community meeting. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Yeah.